Hello and welcome to a new episode of Talking Law from Women in the Law UK. I'm Sally Penni, a barrister at Camworthy's Chambers in Manchester, the Joint Vice Chair of Association of Women Barristers and the founder of Women in the Law UK. This episode is brought to you by BHP Law, a full-service law firm with offices in Darlington, Durham, Newcastle, Teesside and Tynemouth. They pride themselves on a fresh approach, traditional values and local expertise. Before we get to the interview, I'd love you to join us for our very special International Women's Day conference on the 5th of March. You can find out how to attend by visiting our website, womeninthelawuk.com, or visit our LinkedIn page. Just search for Women in the Law UK. Today, I have another brilliant guest for you, Amanda Adeola. Amanda is a partner at BHP Law, based in Darlington, and has worked in the North Eastern Circuit since qualifying as a solicitor. She works predominantly with private law matters, including divorce, finance, and private law children matters, and is keen on advocacy. Amanda and I began by talking about her name.
So, I am Oluwapelumi Amanda Adeola. Oluwapelumi translates to Emanuela, but I go by Amanda to make it easier for everybody else to pronounce my name.
And what is your heritage? Where is your name from? What a beautiful name.
I'm Nigerian. My both parents from Nigeria, and I moved to the United Kingdom when I was a teenager.
Why did you want to become a solicitor? Why law for you?
It's a very straightforward answer. Growing up in Nigeria, there was a lot of injustice that I saw as a child, and it was very clear to me that it was more about who you knew and the amount of money that you had to be able to make headway, as it were. And I recall so many instances where my parents would undertake contracts, for example, bid for contracts. You know, you tender, you pay to do the work, but when it was time to get paid, there was always an excuse. So there was no way they could enforce their rights in that way. Not that they couldn't, but essentially the wealthy people. And I could see this happening quite a lot. And I wanted to do something where I could have a meaningful impact on people's lives and be able to assist people when they need help. And I felt the law was the way to go.
Wow. And why family law? Because you actually went to bar school. You wanted to be a barrister because you studied with Tunde Akewole, a past guest on here. So how did you end up in family law and why solicitor? How did that happen?
Well, I didn't actually go to bar school. I did the LPC, but I originally wanted to be a barrister. I went to London Metropolitan University, well, it was London Guildhall when Tunde and I started there. And I just decided that I would go round the route of being a solicitor because it was very expensive to go to the bar at that time and I had to be realistic about how I would pay for it. And that's why I did the LPC.
Just on that, really, the expense and the cost of the legal profession are enormous. You are extremely successful because you're in your 30s, is that right?
Yes.
And and you're a partner in a national law firm. You went to university, which wasn't one of the Oxbridge universities, and you got a 2-2. And so you are an example of being anything and doing anything. Do you stop and look back at that at all? Or do you just sort of bat on to the next case?
I do reflect on it. And I think that's one of the reasons why I do a lot of work with aspiring lawyers, because I take the view that a lot of people are written off because of their grades, and that is not fair. Sometimes your grades doesn't accurately reflect who you can be or what you can do, and it's important that we try to see beyond that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't work hard to get a first or a 2-1, but I'm just saying that if life circumstances lead you to get a grade that you perhaps wouldn't have gotten had you had the opportunity that others had, that you should be given a fair shot at life. So I do reflect on that in that situation, in helping others. But I have to say, I will also credit my upbringing for being able to push ahead regardless, because there has been a lot of challenges for me to get to where I am today, but it's being able to push through that and have the appropriate support system in place. That's been part of sort of my saving grace, I would say.
And I have to say that you walk the talk. You do a lot outside your private client practice, which is busy. You've got 2 youngish children, but you are on Instagram. I thought it was a blog at first, but actually you've got an Instagram page which is all about mentoring and encouraging aspiring lawyers, and it's called Chronicles of a Family Solicitor. I wonder if you can talk to me about that. How did that come about? How did you find time to set it up and be on there regularly advising, encouraging? And it's kind of taken a bit of a life of its own. How did that come about?
I created that alter ego when I was on maternity leave. I got bored and I was worried that people will remember who I am, as if I'm not memorable anyways in the region where I work. But I got a bit concerned that the judges might forget who I am and I may just completely lose the plot whilst I was off. So I decided to create this to sort of chronicle my journey into coming back to practice. So I set it up during one of my Keep in Touch days, and it's sort of taken a life of its own from there. It went on from showcasing what my life was like as a family solicitor and what I do on a daily basis, to the work that I do with the Women Lawyers and Mothers Network that I'm a part of, and then the mentoring work that I do. And it just kind of went from there, and it's taken a life of its own now. So yes, that's how it all started.
It's wonderful. I want to talk about some of your professional successes, if I may. Your firm is well known, not just in the Northeast, as I alluded to, but actually nationally and in the region. Tell me a bit about BHP Law and the type of work that you do as a family solicitor with higher rights.
So BHP Law is based in the Northeast. They have offices in Darlington, Newcastle, Tynemouth, Stockton. They've been in the region and servicing the region for a very long time. I joined the firm, it'll be 3 years in May. And I specialize in private family work only. There's a lot of cross-selling, as it were, between the firms. So we get a lot of referrals from other departments in the firm. But my work as a family lawyer I deal with a lot of divorce and finance and private law children work. And it is very busy. And I'm thankful for that. It's also helpful that you're in a firm where they have other practice areas. So you do get the opportunity to work with other members of the team in different aspects. So if I need wills for a client, that could easily be done within the firm and things like that.
I wonder if you can share with me, do you have a case that's you can talk about without breaching privilege, of course, that has meant something to you in your professional career to date, or one that stuck with you for reasons perhaps that you can share?
I can remember one when I was a first year trainee, and I have to say that case helped me out a lot in understanding how to deal with different people, and it draws me back to the issue of diversity and inclusion and being able to represent your client in the way that they need you to. And it was a very sad case of a young mum who had their child taken away from them. I did care proceedings then, but unfortunately, it was just a vicious cycle in their life of, alcohol abuse and domestic abuse and things like that. And I remember trying to explain to this young mum that she needed to do X, Y, and Z, to be able to show that she's trying to make those changes in her life. And I won't forget it. We were in the courtroom and she moved back in her seat and got up, crying, shaking, saying, "You will never understand. You just won't understand. I'm doing my best and my best isn't just enough." And I remember going home and it hit me that day that she was doing her best. But if that's all she's known all her life, it will take her a long time to get over that and to be able to become the person that she needs to be. And that has really helped me in my career in terms of how I treat people with the different experiences that they have, and to get them the right support that they need at those particular points so that they can be the better version of themselves. Because people who end up in care proceedings don't want to lose their kids. They got there because of the situation around them. And it's about giving them the right support to get out of those situations.
Interesting when it's put in that way, isn't it? Upon reflection. Now, Amanda, I probably ought to be curtsying or bowing or something official, because I've been talking about there being few black or BAME women judges, or women judges, full stop. The statistics are getting better, but not that well. Because you've become a part-time judge. I want you to tell us a little bit about that, because that happened in the middle of the pandemic last year, and you have started sitting. But the first thing I wanted to ask you was, what was the catalyst for you deciding to become a judge?
I sit in the Northeast, and I don't know if you've ever been in this region before.
Yes.
And as much as we have some incredibly fantastic judges, diversity is very lacking. We have a lot of women judges, but we don't have a lot of ethnic minority judges. I think from my recollection, we probably have only 2 that I've come across, and I've been practicing in this region for, it'll be 12 years this year in October.
Wow.
So for me, I didn't feel that it was representative of our region, really, that we only have 2 minority judges sitting in this region. And I felt that if I wanted to make that change, then I needed to be a part of the change. Therefore, I've got to apply, because if you don't apply, you won't get in. And that's what really propelled me to it. And also a conversation that I had with somebody many moons ago, when we were talking about this particular issue, and their response was very nonchalant in that, well, we haven't got a lot of minority judges because they're not very good anyways. And that really did bother me, because if you have that perception already,
yes,
then what hope is there? Surely anybody who wants to give their time to be able to make decisions that affect people's lives every day, you should know that they will be good enough regardless of their background or their ethnicity, because it is difficult to get through the rigorous application process and things like that. So they just don't pick anybody. So for me, that was one of the fuel that kept pushing me to go for it. And I've been very lucky as well to have some incredible mentors as well who have supported my journey when I made that decision that this was a path I wanted to follow.
Which is fantastic, because I've had the same comment on our circuit. And I wish you the very best of luck. I hope you carry on.
Thank you.
Going further and further, because I'd love to see more judges, as would Lord Reed, who has commented on that. I want to come now, please, on an issue that we've already touched on, which is diversity. There simply aren't as diverse a profession as we would all like to see, irrespective of ethnicity. What do you think about diversity in the law? And really, how can our white colleagues, I'm black, you're black, but our non-black colleagues, if you like, our white colleagues who are well-meaning, dear friends, how can they become better allies and perhaps assist with diversity and improving it?
That's a very important question, Sally, and thank you for raising it. And it's one that I think I've shared on my platform a lot, that really does concern me. Diversity is extremely important. And I keep saying as well that it's not just because I'm black, that's why I'm talking about diversity. No. It's so many other aspects of it. It's about, your ethnicity. It's about your sexuality. It's about your religion. It's about whether you're neurodiverse. It's all of it together. And I gave an example recently of the Resolution, Equality and Diversity Committee, and how we're all so different. But when we all sit together at that table to make a decision and plan for the future, magic happens, because there are different people at the table with different ideas of how things should be done. And we take it all on board and we're able to create magic. And that is what I see as diversity. Having different people with different opinions, not thinking that your opinion is better than somebody else, not thinking that you're superior than somebody else, just seeing everybody as a genuine human being who has something to offer. And that is what it is about. And that's why it's important, because you can't marginalize people because you think, oh, well, they're not from a decent background, so they can't be a lawyer. Oh, well, they speak with an accent, so they can't be a lawyer. Oh, well, actually, no, they're too tall, or they're too skinny, or they're too black, they can't be a lawyer. It doesn't matter who you are. You can come to the table just as you are and bring everything that comes with it and just see how things change. And I say this to my bosses all the time. They got me a BHP Law, and they got the best of both worlds, because I came, and I have to say it myself, that I brought positivity.
Yes.
Just like every other colleague that I work with, we're all different, and different people bring different aspects of themselves to work, and it creates a magical place to work in, and that's what you need.
Now, I am concerned, though, about COVID, not just because of the obvious reasons, but the effects of COVID in the profession. Now, I know you're in private family work. I'm in, well, certainly in criminal work, publicly funded work, and employment law, but I'm worried about the effect on diversity. And I had this conversation with Joanna Hardy that actually the effect of COVID will be that a lot of people simply can't afford to remain in the profession and from different backgrounds because of the sheer costs and the lack of work and, the long-term effects we're bound to see. So I wonder if you had some positivities that you think perhaps have come out of COVID. We don't have to commute everywhere, which is one wonderful thing, isn't it? We're cutting down the travel time, even the Court of Appeal. I don't have to trek down to London on a day when I'm in the middle of a trial. So I wonder if you had any positives that you can foresee. It's easy to see the negatives for post-COVID.
I think most importantly, it would be the flexibility and the flexible working arrangement. A lot of women in particular were impacted before COVID with trying to juggle family life as well as working. But, with some employers not being able to, or shall I say, not being good enough to offer flexible working. But we all have no choice now because everybody sees that it does work and it can work, and you can juggle being a mum as well as working. And I can't see a reason why we can't move forward in that sense post-COVID. It's the same thing with young lawyers. Yes, they do need supervision, but again, there is no reason why you still can't give them that opportunity to be flexible, where we all have Zoom, Teams, etc. You can still keep in touch without them physically being in the office all the time. The age of having bums on seats has really gone now, and we really have to think about the future and going paperless and doing things in a way that, the future will demand us to do things. And that's what progressive firms will be looking at and should be looking at to be able to have that longevity in the profession, really.
And managing those remote teams will become more key than ever. I wonder if I could ask you then perhaps for some advice and some tips and guidance for perhaps those who are entering the law. I often say that the law is a marathon, not a sprint. And so for longevity, we know the attrition rate is still not brilliant, particularly for women. At the bar or in the profession, a lot of people are still leaving, including men, whether it's the publicly funded bar or just because of periods of non-working. So I just wonder if people entering the bar now and perhaps are worried about entering, progressing, all those things, what advice would you have particularly for the entrance to the legal profession?
I think the first one, and you know me, I always quote my dad. My dad always used to do this. He would ask me to look at my time and tell him what it says. And he would look at his time and he would tell me what it says. And generally, his clock is always like 10 minutes faster. I don't know why. And he would say, you see, we don't have the same time. And he would remind me that whatever I'm doing, I should always go by my own time and not anybody else's time. And that's very important when you're trying to get into the profession. Your friends may get in before you. That's okay. You just keep focusing on your own goal. You will get there in the end. If you're trying to rush things, sometimes you end up making mistakes or doing what you shouldn't do. So don't rush. Look at your own time and set yourself your own goals. If other people are doing something, be happy for them. Don't be those friend or that person that would be, hating on the inside, as it were. Just do your own thing. And if it's what you really want, you would stay the course and you won't give up, no matter how hard it is. All of us have had challenges entering this profession.
Yes.
It took me about 3 years, I think, to get a training contract. I was applying for years before I got it. But I knew that was what I really wanted and no other profession would do. And I never gave up. So it is important that you don't give up if it is what you really want to do. And I think the last one is to block out the noise. There'll be so many people that have incredible advice to give you about what you should or shouldn't be doing or how you should do things or, what your goal should be. Well, it's not their goal to, with no disrespect, it is yours. So just block it out. Focus on your own beat.
Absolutely. I love those. I need to try and write those down. If my pen will permit me. That is wonderful. And I know you've got a lot of family in London. So how did you end up in the Northeast for 12 years? Crikey.
Right. I'm going to embarrass my dear husband now. So he was the one who applied for a role first, and he got a role in Richmond. Now, he got very excited and made the application. He didn't realize that it was Richmond in North Yorkshire, where Lady Hill is from, rather than Richmond, Surrey. But nevertheless, he wanted to get out of London anyways, because he had had enough. So he moved to Richmond, and I decided to do the LPC in Huddersfield, so we would be sort of an hour away from each other. And when I finished, I joined him here, and that's where we've stayed ever since. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's right.
Well, it's our gain, because for once I will break the rivalry and say the North. The North, it's like we're in Game of Thrones or something. The North are delighted that you've both stayed in this part of the country, albeit not in Richmond in Surrey. Amanda, during the pandemic last year, saw the Black Lives Matter movement, and the movement reignited, and it actually caused a lot of practitioners to speak about some of the untold stories, if you like, of racism, unkindness, difficulties in the profession. And whilst it wasn't, the inspiration for a children's book that I wrote with my daughter, it did cause a lot of senior practitioners to come and express what they had suffered over the years. And indeed, you were one of them, because you wrote an article which goes to, I think, 6,500 lawyers. And people were surprised. Indeed, I shared some things on Twitter about being mistaken for defendants, as Alexandra Wilson was, and she dealt with it brilliantly afterwards. And so I want to ask you about that, really. Why did you share your own experience, and what was the effect of it?
I think, as I said, I'm part of the Equality and Diversity Committee for Resolution, and we decided that we would make sure that there was articles in the review to cover equality and diversity issues. And it was coming up to Black History Month when I wrote that. And I wanted to focus on diversity and how important it is. That's what prompted me to speaking out. I think a lot happens and we become so immune to it that we don't talk about our experiences. And a lot of people know me. I'm a very bubbly person. You would think I don't hurt. I don't talk about anything that affects me or any comment that anybody has made. I just take it on the chin, and I come home, I speak to my family about it, and then you keep it moving. So to be able to put pen to paper and actually relive some of those, including the first time I ever experienced it when I moved into the UK and at college, and not actually knowing that I was being referred to as a racist term until I told my friends, who then all got upset because I didn't know what it meant. It was interesting to see the reaction to it, because you don't speak about these things. People who read it, a lot of people reached out to say, oh my God, I can't believe you went through that, and I'm so sorry. The people who have known me for years were very proud that I was able to actually speak out and write this. But I think it is important that these stories are shared, not because we're trying to say everybody's racist, but just because we're trying to let you understand that this happens and what you should do about it when you see it happening. You should be able to speak out for those around you and say, well, no, that's not acceptable. You should be able to say, well, actually, how would you feel if somebody said this, that, or the other to you? And that's really was the purpose of me writing it. It was a powerful release for me, to be fair, because all these things you keep inside and you just lock them away in a box. So being able to share some of them with members of Resolution, they get the review magazine, was very empowering. And I was very pleased with the positive reaction that it received. And I hope that created a discussion around how we treat each other and the importance of diversity and having different people at the table and not just the same people that look the same. Because there's no point. If you're eating the same food every single day, then you won't flourish. But if you have a variety of meals, then, you're going to grow, you're going to flourish. And that's the beauty of it.
I feel a bit like I'm in a nutritional podcast for a moment there, but I am.
I like analogies. Like my father, he uses all sorts of analogies, and I kind of picked that up from him.
Yes, no, that's all right. And just for a moment, then let's talk about him. Your heritage, as you've told us, is Nigerian. We look very different. You're very slim, short hair, glasses. You kind of wear your authenticity and your ethnicity all in one. And your father has been a big influence and inspiration in that. And sadly, you lost him last year in the middle of the pandemic. And I know about African funerals. They are celebrations, often of days. There is a sad part, but, well-known people, family members, they are celebrated with dance and song and so on. And you haven't been able to do any of those things. So I wonder, what impact has your father had on you and your career? And how are you dealing with that from a well-being aspect?
My father's, I keep saying it is, because I forget.
Yes.
He was an incredible man. He was in the Nigerian army and fought in the Nigerian Civil War. But he was just incredible. He was one who encouraged you to be all that you can be. And he was ever so proud of every single one of his children. He uses a lot of analogies to try and explain life challenges to you and how you should deal with it in a way that you will understand it. Because there's a lot of proverbs in Nigerian language,
Yes.
And I share some of these proverbs on LinkedIn, but I try to translate them into English, which I don't think I do a very good job of. But he was just so loving. He played all sorts of musical instruments, and he was so giving of his time to so many. So it was really tough losing him unexpectedly like that last year. And not being able to say goodbye was even tougher in the way that we would have loved to. But again, we have to say we're grateful to the NHS because they made it work for us to be able to say goodbye in a way that we could at the time. But he's instilled in me the you can achieve anything attitude. He also instilled in me, just like my mother did, ignore what anybody else has to say. As long as you know what you're doing and you're happy in yourself, you do whatever you want kind of attitude. Not that you shouldn't take people's views on board, but you should be firm in the belief that you have in your own abilities and yourself. That's a very important thing that he did teach me. And I remember I was saying to one of my colleagues the other day, he was so proud that he used to say, before he actually said my name, I don't think a lot of people knew my name by the end of this, because my dad would always say, "Oh, my number 5, she's a lawyer." He would never actually, with his Nigerian accent, he won't actually say my name. And I always say to him, "Dad, I do have a name, you don't have to call me number 5 because we're 5 girls and 1 boy."
Wow.
But that's how he would always, talk about it. I think everybody that knew him knew who his number 5, the lawyer, was. And it was just a loving human being. And, it was my mum's best friend for 48 years. And it's tough for her, but she's doing her best. It's been tough for every single one of us. But I think sharing that moment on LinkedIn, for me, was important. I had come to the living room. I was just pulling the curtains and my foot had hit the landline. Now, my dad every Saturday morning would ring the landline to speak to my son, and they would have a conversation about God knows what. But sometimes before my son rushes downstairs to pick up the phone, he would leave an answer message. And that night I was pulling the curtains. Everybody had gone to bed and my leg just hit the answer phone and it was playing his voice. And that was the first time when I realized that it was gone.
Oh.
And I was trying to shut it off, but I couldn't. And I remember just cowering on the floor and just letting it play so I could get that release and cry, as it were, because I hadn't done that.
Yes.
And I shared that moment on LinkedIn, and it was incredible, the response that it received, as well as the amount of people who have also sort of soldiered on.
Yes.
Without having a moment to grieve. To grieve, sorry, I would say. I mean, I took time off. My employers were good, I have to say. They asked me to be off. I insisted that I was coming back after 5 days. They asked me to let somebody else take over my cases. But I think I just wanted to carry on.
Yes.
I just wanted to carry on because I didn't want to accept that was what was happening with everything else that was going on around me. So it's a steady process.
Yes.
It's going to be a year in March. It's coming.
Wow.
It's coming round, and it's going to take a while. I don't think such an important person in anyone's life can just be forgotten like that. So, but he is an incredible man, and I know he's really proud of all of us. Yeah. Maybe me especially. Don't let my mum know that, but yeah.
Oh no. Number 5. We'll remember. Number 5. And this time has been tough, hasn't it, for many lawyers, many people in our country because of COVID. But many of us who suffer loss, and there's never a moment to stop really to grieve. And it's a training sometimes that we've had in our profession to carry on, and distraction is good. Work is good. So I'm glad that you're taking some time and you had that moment. I want to ask you a question I always ask everybody, which is about books. Now, do you have a favorite book, and do you have a favorite fictional lawyer and that you can share with us? I mean, are you a keen reader? I mean, I love reading.
Well, excuse me, I have to say, and I used to read, I had all of the John Grisham books, I still have them to date, but as life got busy, I haven't been reading as much as I would love to. But my all-time favorite, which I'm going to show you now, is actually, as you can see, is battered because I've read it over and over and over again. And I bought that many years ago. It's My Long Walk to Freedom by Mandela. And this book serves as an inspiration every single time I read it. They're just the incredible grit and strength that somebody has after going through so much when they could easily have given up.
Yes.
And to still want to serve the country where you had suffered such incredible injustice. It's just so powerful. And
wow.
Nelson Mandela's journey is just one that has always touched me. And I remember as a kid, I remember it so well when he was to be released. And there was a huge party in Nigeria and things like that.
Yes.
And those are moments that I won't forget. And when the book came out, I had to buy it immediately. And that's why I have the chunky one, because it was the first first release.
Yes.
It's so big. But that is my favorite book. Favorite fictional character.
Yes, because of course, Nelson Mandela was a lawyer. Many people don't know that, and he studied law. But who is your favorite fictional character?
It's got to be Harvey Specter. I know from Suits. I absolutely love them. He was just brilliant, so intelligent, and the style. Okay, I won't say any more about his style. The hair and the suit. He was just an amazing lawyer in that show. And he would have to be my favorite fictional lawyer. Yes.
That is fantastic. I love that. Amanda, I asked you a question earlier about well-being, which I don't think you managed to answer. But really, it's about everyday well-being. What do you do for escapism? We've all got heavy workloads. I've got 3 children. I've got a lot of work on, and then I've got outside interests. And it's hard, isn't it? Some of us drink too much. When it's winter, all we want to do is eat starch and, heavy foods, hide away. But I've been talking about well-being because burnout is high, especially at the bar and with our solicitor colleagues. So what do you do for your own well-being then? For whether it's for escapism or otherwise?
Okay, this is a very weird one and probably not one you've heard on the podcast before, but I'll let you in on my little secret. I love music and I have noise cancelling headphones. So I put them on and then I do the ironing.
What?
I know. For about 30 minutes or so, I am away in my own ears listening to some classical music or some Afrobeat or some jazz, and I'm dancing away with the door shut with no children, no husband, nobody allowed for that space of time. I finish the ironing and I just leave it there and I just carry on just boogieing away. And for me, that's a huge, huge way that I look after myself because I'm so busy. But to just have that moment where I can't hear anything else but the music is just incredible. Everything else is shut out. And that's what I do to relax. I used to exercise, but I have to say not as much. It's too cold, so I can't go running.
Yes.
So I haven't been out in that sense. So that's a way for me. But I do a lot of work around the house and put myself on timer to make sure I'm getting enough steps and things like that in as well.
Yeah, and I can see a fantastic Fitbit on your wrist there. So it looks like the Fitbit will be loving the ironing in general. So, it is good. Amanda, it's been wonderful talking to you. Before we go, I want to ask you about your super fan status for a guest that I have had on this podcast. And that is Baroness Hale of Richmond, the first woman President of the Supreme Court, of course, the first law lord. And the reason I'm asking you this question is because when I interviewed her, somebody sent a tweet saying, "Oh, you sound starstruck." And I don't think I was particularly. But even if I was, I'd tweeted, wouldn't you? With one of the greatest legal minds, if not the greatest legal mind for some people in British legal history. But you are a special super fan because I've seen in my research a picture of you, a selfie of you cuddling Lady Hale, and many have got pictures of. In fact, everyone should tweet their Lady Hale selfies after hearing this podcast. And you're a super fan of her and what she stands for. But my question is, she inspires many. And so for you, as a Black woman and mother, a lawyer, what is it about Lady Hale that inspires you?
Oh, wow. She's, I could talk about her all day. She is just an incredible legal mind. And I think having somebody who has worked so hard to move up the ranks in her professional career and to still be giving her time to so many to encourage others is just amazing. Not only that, what she stands for in terms of letting everybody know what you can achieve, and that, her book called Equal to Everything is just an incredible book to let you know that no matter where you come from, you can be whatever you want to be. And that's what she's always been about. And that's one of the reasons why I admire her so much. I remember when I met her, I was shaking. I really was.
Were you?
Yes, I really was shaking. And when it was for the Tees Valley Resolution meeting, and our chair, Margaret Simpson of Silk Family Law, had invited her to come and speak. And it was just the day after she gave the judgment on the prorogation. And we thought she wouldn't make it, but she honored her commitment and she came. And
Wow.
I was told by the committee members that I was able to speak. And I was shaking and I was starstruck. And I obviously had to embarrass my entire circuit by wearing a Lady Hale T-shirt as well. I know our DFJ was mortified, but I had to. But she wasn't. She thought it was quite funny. So I got her to sign the T-shirt, which is still hanging in my bedroom. And I remember I hugged her. I gave her a hug. And she stood there and I went, "Can you please hug me back?" And she did. And I was like, oh my God. She was just so lovely, so lovely. And her thousands of cases made a difference in so many people's lives. Yeah. We quote her in so many cases. And that, not just for a woman, but for somebody to make that impact in the legal profession is just phenomenal. And that's why one of the reasons why I think she's incredible. I still am waiting for the day when I will have a one-to-one moment with her and I can physically tell her how much I love her. Yeah.
Oh, well, I hope that she's listening to this. Perhaps I'll send the link of this podcast to her. And she has got a memoir coming out in the autumn, and
yes.
We've invited her to the Women in the Law UK book club, so perhaps you can join us there. But Amanda, thank you so much for talking law with me. It's been an absolute pleasure finding out about your journey in law and your career. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sally.
A big thank you to Amanda Adeola for talking law with me today, and thanks again to BHP Law for supporting this episode. I'm Sally Penni. You can find me on Twitter at SallyPenny1. Do follow, and of course, do write a review. If you'd like to learn more about working in the law, there is a series of free Lunch and Learn webinars from Women in the Law UK, covering everything from skills to improving your well-being, and you can watch those on the Women in the Law UK YouTube channel. Thank you to our production team, Sam Walker and Michael Blades at What Goes On Media. See you next time.